The WellFounder Podcast is proudly brought to you by 45 Fusion. Tired of low-quality leads that never turn into real sales? At 45 Fusion, we don't just get you leads, we get you buyers. With our Educate and Convert system, we turn your expertise into engaging content, put it in front of your ideal customers, and only book meetings with those who engage. The result? More high-intent leads who already understand your solution, so sales conversations move faster. We're so confident in our system that if you're not happy with the lead quality, you don't pay us a penny. Ready to get more high-intent leads? Visit 45fusion.com to learn more.
This is the WellFounder Podcast.
So, welcome to the show, Peter and Stuart. It's an absolute pleasure having you guys on.
Likewise.
Absolute pleasure to be on. Thank you for inviting us on.
I'm normally interviewing one guest at a time. So it's actually, I don't think I've ever interviewed two at a time, actually. So on this podcast, so this is a kind of like double a first. Trouble, right? So I'm really looking for double trouble indeed. Really looking forward to this. I'm actually looking forward to this because this is quite a very important topic for our audience as well, which is something I know a lot of every founder needs anyway. Either you're borrowing or you're bootstrapping. One of those two things is happening anyway, or maybe you're doing both. I don't know. But yeah, before we dive in, we're going to talk about your company today, which is very interesting, FundLabs. But before we do, I always like to kick off by asking my guests to introduce themselves. Tell us who you are and how you go into the work you do.
Sure. Shall I
kick off?
Thank you. Appreciate it. So yeah, just a brief bit about myself and the business. So I started very, very young in real estate. Well, I was a labourer in property, building businesses. Became a lot later down the line. So I started off as a labourer, built my way all the way through. But yeah, all the way through that, I knew that there was a common thread for every business that succeeded and everything that failed throughout, and people I met. And it was securing funds, raising money. And so, I mean, we'll get on to talk about it, but then I've dedicated the last, from 18 months, 2 years ago, I decided to dedicate my time on the planet to helping more people unlock more funds, because I believe that there's a lot of brilliant businesses solving some amazing problems, and the more we can help them unlock funds, I think all round that would feel for me on a personal level like that's the impact that I can have. But and then Peter will give you a bit of an overview of himself, I'm sure.
Yeah, so come from a different angle, and I think that's why we enjoy working together. So I had a corporate career. I was at L'Oreal for 20 years, worked in the UK, was lucky enough to work in Paris, in the Middle East, in Asia, did a lot of cool things. I went to a private equity owned company, GHD, was in the C-suite and exited that. So it was like a big sale to Coty. And then I entered into entrepreneur life, and then we connected a couple of years ago, and I think we shared similar values. So how can we help founders to succeed? Because it's real difficult. Startup is very tough, and then if you want to scale up, it's tougher again, because if you need access to capital, being able to know how to work that is tough. And with Stu, I'd gone through a process myself with him. So raising funds as a founder myself, and saw the insights that you can get when you understand how that process works. And I think, fundamentally, that's why we're doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting. Like two very different backgrounds. Stuart, I am curious, how do you go from labor, as in like you said, to actually funding companies? How does that happen?
Yeah, it's a long story. Well, let's go for it. I'll make a shortened version, but thank you. So I left home at 13, and only yesterday we were looking at photos with the kids, and I realised how young 13 actually is now. It's quite frightening, but I did anyway. I left home, I left school, and to survive, I needed to earn money. I needed somewhere to stay, and so I worked on labouring sites. That's what I did. I couldn't afford to go to school, if that makes sense, because I needed to eat, I needed to survive. That was it. And then whilst I was on the building sites, I needed I needed to find a way to earn as much money as I could. So I was always driven. So I went through, I tried lots of trades. I learned lots of skills. And then, I spent most of my young life on the building side. Now, from there, I then started to, help people with buildings and construction. And then from there, I transitioned into being able to buy my first property and built from there. Now, looking back on it, the driver to build these to buy these properties was based on the fact that I had nowhere to live. I'd spent a good number of years sleeping in cars, garages, friends' sofas, whatever. And so I did not want that. Not having the key to your front door is the strangest feeling. If ever anyone's had to do that, it's something you don't forget. So I built up loads of portfolio, lots of properties. I built up a mortgage advice business, became qualified to do that. I'd layered in loads and loads of levels of business. And then as I went through that, in 2000, I was about, from 17, I was squatting. At age 27, I was, effectively what you'd call a young millionaire. My property portfolio had money, living a great life, right? I thought I'd done it. It was amazing. 2008, let's cut to that. I lost the lot. It all collapsed, right? Because I didn't know how to build business. I didn't understand it. I built what I built out of pure determination and need for survival. Excuse me. And so in 2008, I had a business partner that was taking money out of the business. Everything had stopped. Lending had stopped. And this is where it's really interesting. You couldn't get access to money in 2008 because mortgages had stopped, lenders had stopped, everything had stopped. And all my business was around construction. So there was no construction because there was no lending. Mortgage advice, there was no mortgages. Buying and selling houses, there was none. So everything stopped. Then I had a tax bill, and then it all just collapsed. The tax bill was because when I was young, I found out that you could buy properties on the Help to Buy, 50% discount. And that's how I built my portfolio. I went to people who I'd grown up with. I lived in Ladbroke Grove, which is multicultural. So everyone I grew up with come from all different parts of the world. Lots were from Portugal, Spain, West Indies. And all my life, all day I heard the mum saying, I wish I could go back home and build. So as soon as I realized I could buy the property with them, give them the cash, and they could go and build their dream, that's how I built my portfolio. So the upside to that is I was buying properties in Maida Vale for 80,000. But the downside is when I come to have to sell them because I had issues with the money that I needed to pay back, I was selling them for 400,000. So I had a massive tax bill. Excuse me. So where I'm going with this story is, I'm trying to make it as short as possible. Over that time, I ended up going from there. I had a property. I rented it out to someone I knew very well because I couldn't access money. Here's the point, right? So there was no access to money. I went back to my old world. They weren't doing banking, right? They were doing drugs and gear and whatever else. So they said, yeah, we'll take it over. They took it over, turned it into a cannabis farm. Police come, knock on the door. Do you know? Yes, I do. I'm in jail. Wow. That was a twist in my life, right? But the reason why, and thank you for bearing with that, the reason why that's instrumental to everything is, at that point, everything changed because I was like, all through my life, I was able to make it from nothing. What was the key piece? Is because I had access to money. When I didn't have access to money, it crashed. And therefore I thought, right, going forward in my life, how can I make sure that I never, ever in a position where I can't access money? And that's where I started to build up this process, not for anyone else, not to sell, not for anything else other than for myself, to get out of prison and start again with my life and my family and my kids, and for them to feel like, okay, Dad wasn't a complete loser, if you like, right? He turned it around. And so I came up with this way of raising money, and I thought, well, I'm in prison. Let me see if I can make it work from here. Because if you can raise money from in prison, it's probably easy to do it when you get out. Yeah. So it was at that point I tried it. And within a few months, I raised 1.4 million from inside prison.
Wow.
And so there I knew I could do it. I came out, I got my businesses rolling. I turned over 3.25 million in 18 months. We were off and running. People were asking me how I did it. I started to sell from stage. I started to tell people how we did it, built an academy, helping people raise money. Then I started to, just basically started to consult for funds, everyone really, from sort of like individual multimillionaires would fly me out to help them raise. Funds would ask me to consult for them, funding platforms. And then as I was doing that I met Peter, and then the journey takes a whole nother level. But thank you for asking for me to share that.
That's a very interesting story, man. Like, there's so many, I have so many questions about that. Like, I have to ask though, and feel free if you don't want this included.
You can ask me any. I'm completely open. I talk about everything I've done for my kids. I just tell everybody. So you feel free.
Okay. Obviously, raising money and prison, those two things don't go along very well. Is that an issue for you? Like in terms of trust, have you found that an issue in pushing the business?
Yeah, it was a massive challenge, but I had a choice. So from inside prison, it was different because you can't be on the phone talking about raising money when you're in prison. It's like you get into all kinds of difficulties. So I had to manage that with governors and stuff. So that was different. But then when I came out, bearing in mind, I had no choice I was starting from scratch. And I generally, this was my position. I had no Wi-Fi indoors. All money had run out. Like I had to find a way. I had a tag on, which was a big bleeping light on my ankle, right? So it's, you walk in somewhere, you're at a disadvantage. So I thought, well, I have to turn this. I have no choice. What am I going to do? Hide away? And I'd been in the papers, right? And in the papers, they didn't say property developer. They said drug dealer. So my kids had seen this. People had seen it. It had been all around the area. So it's a major disadvantage, a major challenge. But I just thought, you know what? Fuck it. Like, I'm on this planet. I have to find a way to make this work. I know what I'm about. I know what I'm doing. I know the integrity. I've built serious amounts of business and I've helped many, many people in my life. And this challenge must be there from the universe to see, okay, how do I overcome this? What's the learn in this? And so, it was very difficult. But luckily, I'd built up some brand to that point and some trust. So I went to those people that knew me and said, look, I brought them a gift. I found an area down on the coast that needed, it was in its infancy for property about to go up. And so I'd identified that. So I went to people in London that were busy and said, I've got some real estate. You can invest in it. It's all yours. You put all the money in. It's all you secure it. All I'm going to find you is the discount. So they said, I got 5 people who all said they would buy 1 property each. I then went to the agents and said, I've got a load of money. I'm going to buy 5 properties, but I want 20% off of every property. And so that's how I started. So I didn't actually go out and try and have to convince people. And then I got traction, I got trust. And that was how I did it.
I see. That makes a lot of sense. I am curious though, Peter, when at the initial stages of forming the business, was that an issue for you as well? Or did you was it an issue?
We've only known each other a couple of years, but I don't think I've met a more authentic, honest person than Stu. So I think when you feel ultimately, and then people live up to or don't, there's a lot of people out of prison who I wouldn't trust. I don't trust Stuart, and I think that's I think actions speak louder than words, don't they? So it's about what you do on a day-to-day basis, the value he brings, and the ability to be able to work with each other without egos, without nonsense, basically, just to deliver what we can deliver. And that's the focus. So no, in essence, no, it's not an issue.
Thank you, Peter. Can I jump in there, Zoe? Because I think you hit a really good point. I still now today get people that won't work with me because I've been to prison. I find that pattern is because it's how they might be seen, or can they justify it, or what does it look like for them? So if they've got something to lose, they might not. Whereas on the other side, a lot of people, they not bothered by that because they're like, well, we know what you do, how you work. Yeah, it's, we also do some work with prison reform, and at the minute we're helping them with a raise on a platform like a SaaS platform. There's a lot of people that can't move forward because they're stuck in that, people don't trust them because they have been to prison. It does come with, a form of like red flag, right? It does. And you have to appreciate and acknowledge that. That's my problem. That's what I created, my bad decision, whether I view that bad now, but my decision then led to this. So I have to manage that.
I love how you've turned that around. That's such a amazing comeback story. If there's ever one, that's crazy because it's such a delicate industry. Like, so that kudos to that. So I'm curious, what are
Who
your
hasn't made mistakes in their life? Everyone has. So it's
true.
All you can deal with is today, isn't it? So you deal with what you do now.
Very true. So what are your roles then in the company? Then what do you guys do?
So FundLabs itself has 3 key areas to it.
Okay.
It has a couple of more, but we'll keep it to those. So at the moment, like the core of what we do, me and Peter, is around enterprise. So we call it the enterprise element, which is consumer goods. And for us, there's other raises that we're involved in. But if for me and Peter, we focus on that. Now, that was how it's sort of the main focus for us, because we do real estate, we do M&A, and we there are some sort of other elements, and we've expanded into the UAE now, and we'll keep expanding. But what is powerful about the piece that me and Peter are partners on is that, for me, that expands into so many other spaces. So I think we are co-founders of that piece, that we call it the enterprise piece. But what unlocks that is Peter's experience and expertise, because I can drive the leads, I can build the relationships, I can understand from a personal perspective, but it's Peter that brings it to life, really, which he'll share with you.
Yeah, no, so I guess there's there's lots of people out there in the market who tell you what to do, or you might be very early stage, you're an incubator and you're working in a certain ethos. I think fundamentally where we are really our sort of sweet spot is when businesses are getting ready to scale. So they've already done the hustle piece, and I think that's the key from my perspective, is that early stage entrepreneur. It's really down to them. They've got to find a way to get to that product market fit. They've got to hustle. I think that's the essence of being that real grounded entrepreneur, is being able to get to that. And that's not for everyone. It's a tough battle. But when you get to that, there's then a transformation to make. So it's not the same business when you get to product market fit. You're then having to scale. And to scale that, you're having to change your mindset. You're having to change the way that you attack your growth drivers. So it becomes a bit more structured and a little bit more, you need to start to prove that the things you've done so far are scalable for you to raise money. And I think that's where kind of my experience comes in. So I was in marketing, in sales. I was an MD. I've run 60 odd businesses in different countries all over the world. So I've seen a lot of things. So it's not that you're smarter. It's not that it's just you've seen lots of different things and the way they operate. And so you can see the things that work. And I think a fundamental piece of what we do, and that kind of ties into where I play, is we also work on the investor side. So it's super important that, and it's one of the challenges of founders, is that it's often all about them and how great their story is and what they're doing. Investors don't care. It's what is in it for me. What am I going to get out of this? Why do I believe this is an investable opportunity? So I think the essence, and I think that's something that Stuart's driven a long time, is how do we work both ends? Because you've got to help the founder to talk the language of the investor, and you have to understand the investors and what they're looking for and their criteria. And I think my kind of corporate experience and the way that I can sort of see businesses and read them and understand the way that they're put together enables us, with Stuart's insight into the psychology of the sale of the process of raising money, the process of raising money. It's that combination of skills. So that's in essence what I do, is I'm bringing the sort of business acumen and the hard skills of, does this model tie up with the story that they're telling? Do the financials add up? Do the metrics, do I believe that they can be scaled? Is that story going to stack up when an investor hits them? And then the combination of the way that we look at things is how it all comes together to help a founder who, and I think this is probably the last sort of little switch, is that founders do a raise at each stage, probably once in their life, maybe twice. So it's very difficult to build expertise when you've only done things once and you're in the middle of it. So you're basically learning by messing up, by winging it, by trying to find a way. And I think, when we talk about how fundraising works, it's an elite sport, because you're talking to, at that level, because you're talking to savvy investors from their perspective of what they want. And you are talking about a massively competitive market where maybe 1 in 100 is going to raise the money they need. Well, if you're an athlete and you're going in the Olympic Games, you don't jog around the park, do you, to get ready? You've got to be in elite shape. You've got to get nutritionists in. You've got to get data scientists in. You've got to optimize your performance. So for us, that's the difference. It's not about just going, okay, we've bought you a ticket to go to the Olympics. It's about taking them all the way through that process.
Very, very interesting. Very interesting. So I'm guessing, based on your process, then there'll be a lot of return on investment from the investors themselves, because I guess from what I understand, you're making sure that the companies they're investing in can yield good return. Would that be accurate to say like that?
That's ultimately why people invest, isn't it? It's they want a return on their money. And I suppose the fundamental bit is everything when you're investing is risk reward. It's like, what's the return based on how risky I think it is? So what we're trying to make sure is that, and I guess that goes back again to what are we trying to do, is investors are looking for qualified deals. They're looking for quality deal flow.
Yeah.
And a quality deal flow means a business that is de-risked, that they can see can scale, and that they can see has got good potential for returns. That's what they're looking. It's not nice things. So, just because you have a nice project that sounds really fluffy, nobody cares if it's not going to give them a return. That's
money. Yeah, very interesting. I can see I see how valuable you guys could be for these companies, because you're doing the investors, instead of them doing that hard work themselves, doing the research to see if this company will actually. So you guys go in there, do the work for them, and then I see. Okay, so how what kind of companies do you work with then? Do you guys niche down, or are you open to working with all sorts of businesses in terms of seeking funds now?
It's an interesting question, because for me and Peter have been looking at how wide, how niche do we go for the last few months. I think the criteria that we've come to now is more like this. That there's a hidden number one criteria, which I'll come on to last. But let's go to number two.
Let's start at the end.
Do they have a product that we believe in? Mm-hmm. Do we believe they can raise? Is this investable? And what value or impact can we have to get them where they need to go?
Interesting.
So if it's at the moment we've got a really interesting project on. I'd say it's more than this, but it's nutrition. Would you say, Pete? Would you say? Yeah, it's nutrition. And for me, this founder is such an ideal founder. He's highly driven, knows his stuff inside out, built his business from ground up, and built it the new way, which is, through socials, through getting traction, through getting tribal following. And he's just outstanding at how he applies himself to it. And he's just a family man, a young family man. He means what he's doing. And that, for me, while it's in our wheelhouse, which is great because, then Peter can really add serious value to it. I feel like I would have worked with him at any product that he would have brought, because he has all the elements of what you need. And the number one thing that we look for, which we don't usually declare, is, do we like them, right? Because we got to work with them. It's going to be a partnership. And, this morning I was on a call with some guys. They're trying to raise 18 million. They've got a good project. Yes. Yeah, all good. I've been trying to raise for 2 years. And then the guy comes on the call and he starts telling me about, how to do it. And I just said to him, well, if you knew how to do it, it wouldn't take you 2 years and you wouldn't be on the call with me. So how about we just agree that you might, listen, and that might sound a little bit rude. But sometimes you get to that point with people. You're trying to help them so much, but they're just not listening. And that might be why they're not raising. But anyway, you asked, what sector specific, but I feel like, Pete will sum it up for you around what I call the consumer goods. I think that's where it would be a big focus, but there are others.
Yeah,
Pete, what do you think?
Yeah, I think we started, actually, because I've got a beauty background and I'd worked with health and wellness sort of brands, you naturally kind of gravitate to that. But actually, I think what's interesting is it then has gone into multiple different things, from SaaSes to vet surgeries to it doesn't necessarily matter, because what's actually important is the process. And I think this is where I think is really fundamental. Again, it goes back to that first point, or the earlier point that I made about the grind at the beginning, the hustle piece. The founder is going to know their category better than you. They really should do, because they're in it every day. They know their product better than you. We don't need to go in there and try to tell them what they should be doing with that. That's not the game. They know that. What we can do is elevate, be able to extract all of the information from them, because we understand how businesses work and we understand how the investment process works. And then it's about, how do you optimize their story, their business, and themselves? Because I think, that's why it's so important what Stu was saying, in terms of, you can look at the sector and you can think of all those things that they're great and the investors are interested. But at this stage of a business, you need some clarity around a plan. You need to believe that it's scalable, but fundamentally you're taking a bet that the founder is the person who can take this business on. So the founder's energy and the founder's confidence comes from having clarity, and comes from understanding at each stage of the process what they're supposed to interact with. If they are winging it, it can derail at any moment. You can think you've got an investor, you lose it with the wrong phraseology, the wrong answering the wrong question in the wrong way, not giving the right information, being slow, all of the things, the little nuances that can destroy it. So I guess it's that. So it's about, yes, we can bring value in terms of business acumen and seeing it, but the founder is the expert. The sectors, if we don't feel we'll have anything to add, then I think it's a different thing then. But that's part of the process. You mentioned about the criteria. It's absolutely that. We've got to think that we can bring some value to this. Otherwise, there's no point, because there's a shared risk in this as well, in the way that it works. So I guess that's really the best way of doing it. It's the business, it's the narrative, but it's the founder as well, and it's how we bring those together that is the most important.
Very, very interesting. And on the investor side of things, I've always been curious on how that works, basically. Like, are there some very super rich people that just don't know what to do with money? That just be like, yo, Peter, Stuart, I need to know what to do with this, 100 million that I have sitting in the bank account. How does that work? Basically?
But I think they know what they want to do with it.
Yeah, they know what to do with it. There's a range of investors.
Okay.
So you have what we call just a stack, and they have different appetites and they have different criteria. I've done a raise before, or I've been involved in a raise where there was a a team we worked with, just give you an example of one end of the scale to the other. A team we worked in Holland, North Holland, and they famously could help people with like later stage cancers live longer without medicine. And it was all to do with the way that they treated their bodies, the fasting, the meditation, nutrition, etc. It was pretty deep. And they were renting a center. They were having results across the globe, and very, very well-known guys. They wanted to raise 5 million and couldn't do it. And it was as simple as I went there with them and stayed there for a week and talking through the whole way to do it. And it was as simple as, well, I said, have you gone out to your client base? And they were like, no, we tried to do like a crowdfunding. No one was interested. And I said, well, it's in the nuance, right? Let's go out to them and say, if there's anyone that that we've had an impact on or saved, give you a longer life to your family member or whatever, we're interested to speak to some people about a raise we want to do to have that impact on more people. They raised £5 million, 5 million without anything. Like wow. They raised the 5 million, and what the person said is, you gave me my wife's life back. So I have 5 million, I'll give it to you, paid a minimal interest, right? Legally they have to. And they said, as soon as you then raise the money that you need over 5 years, you pay me my money back. Now, that's a more philanthropic end of the scale. But then you go all the way to the other end, you will have, like the raise we spoke about that we got going on at the moment, you'll have 4 or 5 different entities coming into the raise, and they are, structured they have a lot of money there that they have to get out the door and get it back in safe. But quite often those funds have funds behind them. So the big fund will give it to the smaller funds to deploy. Because what I learned a few years ago when I was a consultant for a pension fund with real estate, they were like, we don't want big returns. Like the returns are so small, because what they want to do is they want to park their money safe over a long time. Whereas it can't be safe in a bank because it's not insured. They're not going to put it into crypto, right? So it's like, where does it go? And so they have a big problem. People with a lot of money have a big problem. And so once you understand that they won't just let it go anywhere, they have to park it in certain places. Okay, what's the criteria? Where does it need to go? Then you start to understand the problem is not so much on the founder side, it's bigger on the money side, because they've got to get that money out the door, make money and get it back.
And they're trying to find the right portfolio of investments. So they'll want some that are quite risky. So, venture is much more risky because a lot of them won't work, but you only need 1 or 2 to come off. And then they're going to want other safer options in other areas. So it's...
Yeah. And through crypto now, what you're seeing is new, different young funds, we call them, right? Guys that are sick to death of having to be told or directed or worry about the way that a VC fund treats them. And so these young guys who have made their money in crypto are coming together, and they're like, okay, how do we deploy it? And even if you go deep in, we've done some raises advising in the Cardano space 4 or 5 years ago. And the way that they raise in there, it's all quite close, connected, done on, potential, of course. But yeah, there's lots of different new ways of securing money at the moment.
Very, very interesting. Very interesting indeed. Like you've really given me a clarity on, because it's always been a mystery to me in terms of this, where this money is coming from. Like, and so, you mentioning like pension funds, that is, they have to put that money somewhere. So if that money can make more money somehow, then okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and they'll put it in. Like we've got one going on at the moment. The pension fund will put it into a real estate play, but the real estate has to be so safe, and so they're putting into government-backed leases with the real estate, so that they know that whatever happens, this money's always going to be secure. It's de-risked, and they get a return basically, and they know that they're going to exit it in X amount of years, so that they get the money back. So yeah, you see lots of plays like that.
And I'd say
very interesting.
A key thing with the founders that we're working with is to find the right investors, because it depends what you're looking for, and it depends at what stage. So I think a fundamental question at the beginning, and I think with SaaS, that can also be a question, is equity the right way of going about it? it may not be, because you're obviously diluting in the future. So it's making sure. But if you decide that the right choice is equity, then it's at what stage do you want to go? Are you looking for angel investors? Are you looking for more? You need to go bigger. Are you looking for family offices? Are you looking for VCs? What's the right type of investor? And then you've obviously got to make the choice in what gaps do you want those investors to fill? Do you need board seats to be filled? Do you need certain skills and networks that people can bring? So you're thinking of it strategically rather than I need to raise money, I'll take a check from anyone. It's absolutely about what's the right investor, because they will also work with you for a long time. You might be in this business 5-10 years. You want to make sure your investor partners are people that you like to be around and can support you. So there's a number of factors that are important as well in that.
You bring an interesting point. I was going to ask if your founders ever meet the investors, or do they just deal with you guys and then how does that work?
It's always the investor. It's always the founder. The founder is the one who is selling their project. Yeah, I mean, the investors are buying the founder. So we're just helping them go through that process and making sure they package. Yeah.
I see. So how do you guys make money then in this case? Who pays you? Like, is it the investor or the founder? How does that work?
So depending on the project and depending on how it's set up and depending on the sector, there's loads of ways. But if we keep it simple, we can typically be brought on to consult for a raise. That can happen. And so we would be paid to consult. We can also be paid to consult and get a raise fee, so a percentage of the raise. So that would be paid effective. And sometimes it's paid the odd occasion by a bit of both sides. Quite often it's the founder who pays it. And then we've in very rare cases, but there are a couple that I've got going on at the moment where it's equity. So we will consult for equity, and quite often, like in some of the M&A projects, that's quite common. But what we do, I mean, we're in a position now where we're not like just the many of the coaches and consultants. We do it different. So we don't have to compete at that lower end, which is good. So we are at the higher end of of fees, but then you're working in the the sort of 1 to 5% of the planet that raises, because the stats are that 95 to 99% of people do not raise. That's a massive stat. If you think of all the young entrepreneurs, all the businesses out there, 95 to 99% of them are not going to secure money and they're going to die. And so our focus is on how can we bring more of those people out of that 99% into that 1 to 5% and secure the raise. So it's that's typically how we would do it.
And it's through stages.
Very interesting.
It's through stages of the process of raising money. So it's understanding first.
I see.
Yeah, and we split that down so that it's kind of manageable through the process.
Yeah, and we have ways of helping them with payment plans and all kinds of ways. Our experiences, we have and are in their shoes, right? So it's not like we're coming in from one end and don't get them. So we understand what needs to happen to help them unlock it, and we also understand it from the fund side as well. So we're very different. That is a bit of a unique advantage. We understand it from both sides. We come at it from both sides, but we know how to sit in the middle and help them secure the raise. Like they're working with someone like ourselves, because we'll work with them immersively. So we're not like someone who tells them what to do, pats them on the back and says, jump in the cage and, learn to have a cage fight, right? It's like, no, we're in there with you. We're fighting with you. We're working with you. Sometimes we'll come on calls with them, right? If they want support with the lender, with the funders, we'll jump on a call. We'll coach them, we'll consult with them, we'll speak with them. We'll go through it all the way through, even to once they've secured the money, we're still working with them. Very, very different to introducers, brokers, or coaches that just tell them what to do. It's very different.
Yeah, because I've interviewed another founder, similar business. His is more of the kind of you go on the platform, tell them how much you need. If you
Yeah.
pass, if you meet their criteria, they give you the funding. You guys are more in depth, and you work with the. I actually like your business model because of you must work with some very interesting companies like you must see some very, because especially if you're invested in their success as well, you guys
Yeah.
must really very interesting. So
Yeah.
is there any do you have like a cap, or in terms of what you can help somebody raise, or is there a minimum, is there a maximum?
Yeah, I mean, there's a sweet spot for sure, which Peter will break down, I'm sure. I'm a little bit different. Peter's really good for me because he goes, "Where you going? Come back. Let's just focus in on here." But last year I consulted for 6 months on a 127 million raise. That was
At once, yeah.
yeah, that was pretty big. And then we've done, we're doing a 250K at the moment.
Okay,
But the 250K is because it's someone very close to me. It's, to do with it's to do with youngsters that want to get a restart. So, we can choose where to go. But so there's no real cap, but there will be a sweet spot and the sweet spot's natural because at certain levels it changes. And so like at the smaller level, it's a whole different, startups is completely different to scale ups. And then, exiting for PE where you might want to raise beforehand, that's a whole nother level. But yeah, Peter, what would you say, how do you explain our sweet spot for that?
Well, I think it's a combination of where the business is at, because it's a bit where we can add the most value. So it's again going back to that they've got some revenue. So if it's pre-seed, just idea, or it's a very small revenue trying to build it, it's probably not something that we will work with. And I think that's where incubators and coaches and certain things can be really valuable, because they can give you the guidance that just helps you to get through that hustle piece. We would generally be where a business has got 1 to 2 million of revenue at least, and then it's looking to raise $1 million or so. But we will look at businesses that are looking at 500,000 if we see that they are the right sort of profile and that we can do something that will bring them value. Because we're also thinking about this as well long term. So, they may raise now and they may well want to raise in the future. And if you're taking them through that and helping them to perform, because that's also a key part of what we try and do, is it doesn't finish when you raise the money. It only begins. You then need to start to perform so that you can leverage that down the line, and you can, so you spend the money right, that your plan is activated in the right way, and you're working in partnership with your investors. So yeah, I would say there's a sort of minimum, but that comes from business stage, sector that we can bring some value, and then how they see, how they're going to go and raise it and who from.
Very, very interesting. All right, let's talk about your criteria or qualifications now. I mean, you've touched a little bit on that in terms of, so let's say a founder is watching this and wants to, reach out to you guys. What criteria do they have to meet before you'll be like, what, let's find you some investors, or no, we're not going to work with you? What does that look like?
Shall I jump? Yeah. So again, I think that it's a bit of a process. So how we do is we start first of all. So we would normally charge £500 for an intro discussion, but if we see the first discussion is okay, we'll do a free session at the beginning, and that one is really to understand where they're at in the raise journey. And I think that's the fundamental piece. It's just like, have they tried to raise? Have they ever raised before? Who are they trying to raise from? Are they clear about what they're trying to raise? Are they sure that raising equity is the right thing to do? Then top line things about their sector, what revenue they've got. That enables us to look at, is this something that we could do something with? Where are the gaps that we go, this won't raise unless that's filled and that's filled? We can identify the opportunities that maybe they're not telling the story in the right way, but fundamentally it's just about where they're at in their raise, and do they understand how they will go forward and do their raise strategy? Then the next, and that's the first criteria. And then the next one is we'll work with them, and that's where we definitely start to have the paid elements. Is we'll work with them to get them sort of investment strategy ready. So in effect, we can go into much more depth and then really start to see, does the narrative stack up? Do the business model stack up? Does the revenue stack up? And that's a kind of fairly condensed period, but it's quite intense. That's the next basically qualifier or disqualifier, because you're able to tell them. And I think also importantly with what we do is we're using our investor partners to test those, to stress test the stories and go, where do you see this? Because it's important. It's not just coming from us. And then that's the next criteria piece, which is once we've done that dive, we see that, okay, there's a hell of a lot of work that needs doing. You need to do X, Y, Z, and you probably need to go back and make this happen. Or it needs some work, but it's just about how we put that narrative together, and we just need to see that these things are done. Or you're ready to go, then it's about the next stage. If they've qualified for that, then it's really about how you go and outreach, who you're going to target, how quickly, the conversations to have, and taking you through those. I think that answers that.
I see. Okay, very, very. I like that. You guys really work in depth with your clients. Very interesting. And I guess if they don't, have there been? You probably have. You probably had people that you're like, no, we're not gonna raise for you. Let's just end the relationship there. Or is there? Would that be a common thing?
Yeah, I think what's we can tell pretty early on, if we believe that they have something, and then it comes down to, do we believe that they are coachable, if you want to put it like that? Are they at that point yet? But I can tell you something very, very simple that we use, that we've taken as a data point. So we mapped out, I think it was over, I want to say 400 sessions that we had. This was about 2 years ago. We mapped out what was the common thread where it fell apart or it didn't work. And because sometimes people have lots of money and they're just like, yeah, let's do it. But there's 3 key elements. If they don't commit to it, and I mean commit, I mean like it can't be a side hustle raising money. It can't be an afterthought. It can't be, I know I need to do it, but I can't be asked. It has to be at the forefront of your business. It's like breathing air, right? Like it's got to be number one. Because without the oxygen to your business, the money, right? You can't breathe, you can't think, you can't operate. You can't train, you can't do anything. And so commitment to the raise has to be number one. You can tell very early on if they turn up late to a call, they're trying to talk to you from in the gym, and you're just like, no, you're not really making this like paramount, right? Oh, hold on a minute, my friend wants me. It's like, they're cues. Commitment's number one. Yeah. Number 2 is communication, right? One of the most important things around a raise is that we can communicate with you, and you say, I'm uncomfortable with this, or I don't like it, or I don't like that investor, or I don't like the way you teach or coach or consult. Because we can all pat each other on the back, right? We can all give each other loves on LinkedIn or wherever you want to be. But really, where do you get the most movement and growth, right? When me and you can say, this isn't working, let's find a solution. That's where you get the movement. So commitment and communication is fundamental. And then the third one pulls them all together, which is cadence, right? Which is movement. You can't commit and only speak to me once a week, right? It's like in your own relationship with your partner. I'm committed to this relationship. I'll communicate with you whatever happens, good or bad, rather than I'll go quiet, but then I'll go off and seek some love from another woman or another man, right? It's like commitment, communication. I need more attention. I need more whatever it is, food, whatever. I need more love. I'm not good with this, or I'm happy with this. So those two go together, and constant, right? We all need constant communication. Now you bring those 3, and we've onboarded you because we've identified it works. This works. This is how we can tell. But I've had people before that have come and laid serious money down, like, here, come with me, paid me, turned up for 1 session.
And they're gone.
They did nothing.
Wow.
Because they're too comfortable.
I see. Very interesting. Human beings.
We're all human beings, aren't we? And I think which also is expectations. It's like people go, I need to raise in the next 2 months. You're like, okay. Right. And where are you at the moment? Well, I haven't started yet. Okay.
Uh,
It's being able to understand that there are realities about what things need to be done and what time takes, so that people are in the right frame of mind. Yeah, and I think that ultimately is really what it comes down to, isn't it? I just think that the analogy of the elite athlete is what it's all about. It's really challenging to raise money, but it's absolutely critical, because the consequences of not raising money are pretty profound. Either you get stuck at a very low level of business, and that could be okay for some people. You don't want to raise money. You just want to do £2-3 million of revenue and make a bit of bottom line, and that's perfectly fine. But if you want to scale, you need the money or you die. So then if you're going to do it, it's as Stu says, if you don't commit to it and you don't make this a project that you manage in a serious way, and you've taken it and you understand who you're selling to, in effect, you're selling your opportunity to somebody, then you're not going to win, because it's super competitive. You've got to justify that with investors who are looking for something particular. So it's, and I think that's what we're about.
I love it, man. I could chat with you guys for 3 hours straight.
We should do a day. I've got a call at 2, so I'm just mindful. But I'd love to chat. I'd love to continue the convo. If ever you want to, have a part 2, let's do it. Yeah,
let's do a part 2, because I've got so many questions around this. Okay, let's do a part 2 then. To wrap up things, where can our viewers go learn more about you guys or possibly work with you? What's the best way for them to do that?
For me personally, at the moment, LinkedIn. I've come off of the other socials, TikToks, Instagram, because I needed the time back. But yeah, just on LinkedIn for me.
Reach out, send a DM, connect, no problem.
Yeah.
Wicked. It was amazing. It was awesome having you guys on. I look forward to bringing you back. I'm going to have more questions around that.
Thank you for having us.
The problem.
Thank you guys for coming. I appreciate it.
Enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Have a great afternoon.
The WellFounder Podcast is proudly brought to you by 45 Fusion. Tired of low-quality leads that never turn into real sales? At 45 Fusion, we don't just get you leads, we get you buyers. With our Educate and Convert system, we turn your expertise into engaging content, put it in front of your ideal customers, and only book meetings with those who engage. The result? More high-intent leads who already understand your solution, so sales conversations move faster. We're so confident in our system that if you're not happy with the lead quality, you don't pay us a penny. Ready to get more high-intent leads? Visit 45fusion.com to learn more.